Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. You are starting another networking Friday, this time together with Blue Mission, Agora, and also Climate Rest, the projects they are part of the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse of the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters. And well, we have a very long agenda, so we start right away. With Claudia Pecoraro. Claudia Pecoraro is a Policy and Communication Officer of Health, Seas and Ocean at DG Research and Innovation from the European Commission, and she's taking care of the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse. So she will start, let's say, to frame a little bit, the mission and the lighthouse, so we can explain the role of the stakeholders and citizens in shaping up this mission. So without any further ado, Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joseph, for this invitation to this webinar, which I find very, very, very important, just to understand what you are doing and how we, from the European Commission, we can cooperate all together. As you said, I'm in charge of the mission Restore Our Ocean Waters. This is one of the major initiatives launched by the European Commission to restore our ocean waters. For those who do not know yet what is the mission about, in the next slide, I would like to present to you what are our ambitious projects. Within our 2030 horizon, we target the three main objectives: to protect 30% of the EU sea area, restore marine ecosystem, and achieve 25 kilometers of free flowing river.
Yeah, Claudia, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just okay? Yes, perfect. Sorry. Can you continue? No, because yeah. Sorry
I think,
that.
yes, no, absolutely. I totally agree. It's much better for everybody to see all the objectives and enablers, which are important to understand what I'm going to say later on. Yeah. So the second objective is to prevent and eliminate the pollution by reducing plastic litter or at the sea, nutrient losses, and chemical pesticide by 50%. And the third objective is to make the blue economy climate neutral and circular with the net zero emission. To support the mission objective, we plan also two cross-cutting enablers. One is the digital ocean waters knowledge system, and the second one, which is relevant for the scope of this meeting today, is the public mobilization and engagement. Engaging with the European people at large, it's important to help catalyze the transformative change that is necessary to restore our ocean waters. In the next slide, thank you. Here you have lots of information, but I want just to mention you that we have launched the mission charter, which is not binding. It's a simple tool. It's a survey whether all the organization entities that you may know, or probably you could be interested as well, that have activities, programs, plans, initiatives in line with the three objectives that I just mentioned, the two enablers, they can fill in this survey. In this way, they will adhere to the mission charter, and their action will be displayed in an interactive map. So far, we have received over 500 actions submitted. 433 are visible in the mission atlas with a budget of more or less 4 billion. As you could see from the list of countries that have been pledging their actions, the Mediterranean Basin is the one that is most active. So we need indeed to activate the other countries. In the next slide, this is an interactive map that I was mentioning. When I finish talking, I will post in the chat the link where you can find this interactive map, as well as all the actions that have been submitted. And so you can have a look over the type of action, which type of organization has submitted, and of course, so as you are seeing now, where exactly it is mentioned. In the next slide, I will enter a bit more into detail of what it has been done so far for this engagement, mobilization engagement, in terms of funding from the European Commission. In the next slide, you will see that through the Horizon Europe program, the mission has launched three work programs with the three calls for action, so call for proposal, which have been already published in 2021 with an overall budget of 120, more or less, the same for 2022. And it occurs the same in 2023. And those calls have been submitted with a deadline of 20 September. So we have received these calls, and these calls will be assessed. So in the next slide, let's enter a bit into detail of what we have done so far for the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse, in particular this focus. As you know very well, we have funding to Innovation Action, Climarest, and Agora that they will present later on. These are two innovative actions for the restoration of marine and coastal ecosystem. We have funded the coordination support action for the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse, which is well coordinated by Jose Mourinho. And in the next slide, I present what we have funded in terms of public mobilization and engagement calls. As you could see in 2021, we have funded a project called FLOW for the development of future lives with ocean and waters that will enable the co-ownership, co-responsibility, co-implementation of the younger generation to co-create a blueprint for stewardship and featuring social interaction and engagement with sea and waters. Another project funded under 2021 is Otters for social transformation for water stewardship through scaling up, and it is a citizen science project. We have funded also in 2021 Plastic Parrot. Plastic Parrot is an innovative project for citizen science, which was initiated by the three previous presidencies, Slovenia, Portugal, and Germany. And now it counts a total of 13 countries that have adhered to the project. And they will engage and empower. They are engaging actually in empowering young people in different, let's say, basing through events, through engagement events. The recent one was at the EU Open Day in May in Brussels, or the river clean up in Hungary, which was recently also featured in one of the Euronews, and the World Cleanup Day, which took place here in Brussels, in Belgium. So as you could see, this is another good example of project of citizen science. In 2022, we have funded the project SURE and ProBleu. SURE is again another a project for ocean literacy school to empower students as the agent of change. So to play an important role in making changes for our ocean and waters. ProBleu, it's also an ocean literacy project to promote ocean and water literacy in school community. So it is is very important to see how these students will be empowering through this project. But not only students, also young generation citizens. Then in 2000, so I think, we had also Schaeffer. Seafarer is another innovative project that we have funded through the call 2022. We need a new business model for regenerative aquaculture, informed by scientific research-based evidence. And such practice must be technically, operational, and economically speaking, viable for ocean farmers, highlighting the clear benefits, the market potential, and the job creation. So Seafarer will deliver a roadmap and a guidance co-designed with the stakeholder to support ocean farmers in the Atlantic and Arctic basin to develop a community-driven business model for regenerative ocean farming and policy making, of course, to take enabling actions, concrete actions. So this is relevant for your area. And then I will finish with Col Bleu. Col Bleu is another community ocean farms and local business, local business clusters project. And in 2022, we have funded the two other calls. One, it aims to present, as you could see, the shoes. It's a campaign more for responsible consumption of products from the sea. As I said, we have received calls which will be assessed. And the second one is just to fill the gap, the emotional gap between ocean and the citizens. So through the arts will represent tools, valid tools, to empower citizens, raise awareness about the challenging that the ocean are facing. And of course, it will involve not only artistic dimension, but also researchers and philanthropists, investors. So these are the calls that I have funded so far. But in addition to that, in the next slide, I would present briefly, and then I promise that I will finish because I realize that I speak too much. What we do in terms of engaging with the public mobilization. Apart from what you have seen, apart from the funding through the work programs, in all our events, the mission, Restore Our Ocean Waters events, the mission that we organize at the local level in each basin, we always tend to bring together component of citizens, of youth. We started in Cork, for instance, where there was the launch of the kickoff of the CSA for the Atlantic and Arctic, and in there we started to initiate our relationship with the school, primary schools, but we had also the ambassador, the mission ambassador there. We continue in other events like in Marseille, in Palermo, where we had, for instance, the school that have adhered to the charter that came, and in Palermo recall this primary student that came with a poster that they have made saying our mission is the mission Restore Our Ocean Waters. So you could see that at this level, early age, there is an interest also to be engaged and empowered. In June, we had another event together with the Ocean Race. Ocean Race, as you could know, mobilized lots of citizens. And on top of that, we had also the engagement with the Coast Guard and the students together there. It was very nice. We had also the mobilization at local authority level with the mayors that of the cities that have adhered to the charter. I also mentioned the Galway event where there was a session where students presented the innovative solution. They have found a solution to tackle the main challenges that this mission has to face. I know that all the projects, the CSA, the Coordinated Support Action for each basin, have organized events where they bring along the mobilization of citizens and youth, which is important not only to raise awareness about the main challenges, but also about the mission, about what we are doing all together, because indeed this mission is not only from us, but it's for you. My last message to all of you is the following. The European Commission, the Mission Secretariat, is at your disposal to identify any synergy activities, synergetic activities together with you. We can flag events, we can flag what we are doing, but it's extremely important also that you two talk to these projects, the one that have been funded, the one that will be funded, in order to bring along at your basin what you are doing in order to complement each other through activities, through events, through whatever it is relevant for your plans. What I would like to say is that we should work together with what we are funding and not to work isolated. We have to really join forces, work together. We are at your disposal because the mission indeed is for you and with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for this presentation, Claudia. Very informative. And I know we are the Networking Friday, and I know very well this public. We already got two answers, two questions. This question was supposed to be asked at the very end, but I have to link with your presentation. There are two questions in our Q&A box. They are basically the same. I also received two questions on my WhatsApp, one from Brazil, another one from Argentina, with the same questions. I mean, it's basically the question from Carlos Tamoyo Rodriguez from Colombia, I guess. Very interesting and ambitious STI program. Thanks for the very informative presentation. We have only one notion. If Europe works alone, you never achieve the objectives. How are you involved with other Atlantic countries, namely Colombia? Very good question.
Very good question, and I thank you for this question also to raise that actually the mission is not only at European level. Through the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse, as well as the Mediterranean, we envisage this international dimension, which is covered in this basin. The funding, the work program, in terms of funding, the work programs are open to all associated countries. And also, allow me to add another thing. We have launched the concept of associated regions, with which we wanted to integrate in the innovative actions projects the ecological ecosystem, the ecosystem, similar ecosystem. In other words, we have innovation actions funding under the mission. One of these is indeed remedies, for instance, or Agora, and they will launch cascading grants. They will launch cascading grants for associative regions. If one of the country is not a member of the consortium of the innovation action, then he can participate to these associated regions calls. By the way, we are organizing on the 20th of October an informative session of how and who can participate to the associated regions. What I will do now is, if I replied to your question, I will put the links that I promised of the charter actions, and also the link where everybody can register to know more how the associated regions can participate, to know about this concept, if it is okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, it's important. For example, we have a follow-up question here from Regina Foloruncho. She's one of our very good friends from Nigeria, from the National Institute of Ocean Research. And she's asking, how is it possible to entertain observers from other countries? I guess, Regina, I mean, Claudia just replied to your email. She will post the address. And then if you want to get more information, I can put you in contact directly with Claudia to receive any other additional clarifications. Is that okay, Claudia?
Sure, I'm always at disposal of everybody.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Claudia, and we'll keep in touch, Regina.
Yeah, sorry. I will post. Sorry, I will post in the chat, but then I have to leave because I have another meeting.
Oh, yes, I know. That's why I asked you the question.
Thank you so much. I will post everything now, and then I have to leave, okay?
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we move to our keynote speaker today. She will talk about her experience on stakeholder engagement. It's Nicole Biebow from AVI and EU-POLANet. And we will learn a lot about 8 years of stakeholder engagement, EU-POLANet. Thank you so much for being available, Nicole, and the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Jose, for introducing me. I will present you now in the following 15 minutes about the lessons learned the lessons we learned in the 8 stakeholder engagement that we have performed in EU-POLANet. EU-POLANet, I will introduce to you in a minute. I have to say, all what we have done in EU-POLANet is somehow associated to research. So this makes us a little bit special and a little bit maybe different to the mission. I have to. Something is not working here. The work which I'm presenting is not done by me. I'm the coordinator of the project. We have a dedicated stakeholder group, which is led by Kirsi Lattola from the Thule Institute of the University of Oulu. And we even have a dedicated stakeholder guardian who takes care that we never forget our stakeholders. And this is Annette Schaeffer from the Arctic Center of the University in Groningen in the Netherlands. So short excursion so that we understand what we are doing and why we are doing this stakeholder engagement. So EU-POLANet is now running in its second phase since 8 years, and it's a coordination and support action of the European Commission. We are tackling polar issues only, and have a consortium of 25 members, which are the main players in European polar research, covering 21 countries. You see them here on the slide. And as I said, it's a coordination and support action. That means we cooperate mainly with the European Commission and advise and support on all issues related to the both poles, Arctic and Antarctic. So our ambition in EU-POLANet is to advance European polar research by coordination, by research prioritization, and so on and so on. So we use many different tools, and the research we are promoting, all the polar research, has to be of high society relevance and has to serve our stakeholders. It is not just basic research, so it has to have a relevance. That's why we perform the stakeholder engagement. In addition, we also support policy-making processes, and finally, we are at the moment trying to sustain EU-POLANet as a legacy in the European Polar Coordination Office. This is where we are working on now. So The first thing when you do stakeholder engagement, you have to identify who are your stakeholders. Stakeholders and citizens are not necessarily fully the same, but strongly overlapping, I have to say. And at the early beginning in EUPolarNet, we defined who are our stakeholders. So these are those who are potentially affected by or concerned about, interested in, important to, or having any influence on polar research agendas, or will be end users of polar research outcomes. And then after we have agreed on a definition, we mapped our stakeholders quite intensively. So, we mapped the following categories: policy or decision makers are important stakeholders, then business and industries, non-governmental organization. Of course, academia is an important stakeholder since we are dealing mainly with research. And then the wide civil society, of course, is an important stakeholder. And in our case, we put a special focus on the indigenous people living in the Arctic. I will go a bit more in detail on that later. The main aspect, or the general aspect, which you have to be tackle when you want to engage stakeholders, they were clear from the beginning. So societal relevant projects can aid in societal challenges. The issues you address with the stakeholders or have to be relevant and of interest to the stakeholders. You have to look how, and that's what we learned really heavily, which format you use depending on which different stakeholders. And absolutely key is you have to be committed to what you are doing. Otherwise, it will not work. This is something, this needs a lot of engagement also from the project side. So, and what did we then do to engage our stakeholders? So we had a twofold approach. We started first with an online EUPolarNet engagement survey in 2016 at the beginning, for which we get 300, about a bit more than 300 replies. And with this survey, we wanted to identify how our stakeholders want to be addressed best, so how we could best interact with them, if they are at all interested to work with us in polar research, and at what stage of the process. So it was more the methodological background of our engagement. And the outcome was that it's differing strongly between different groups. So the majority of stakeholder groups prefers, first of all, an overarching mailing list information. Then for the academia preferentially would like to see workshops, personal dialogues, fieldworks, everything related to meeting people, of course, presentation on conferences and so on. NGO representatives really would like to join annual meetings and receive updates as regular as possible. And the same for industry participants. They prefer regular updates also by mailing list and so on, but they are very keen on personal dialogues to get their input into the process. The second step, I hope someone of you can read that, I'm sure not many, was identifying the research needs of our stakeholders. And to identify that, we made another story, online questionnaire, which was translated into 9 different languages, among these Greenlandish, which you see here. And we ask only one question: what are the most important topics in relation to your work and our everyday life in the polar region? And that should be solved in the future, in future research. We personally send personalized invitations to more than 1,000 people from all our stakeholder communities and got more than 500 answers from 36 countries. Here we learned, if we make it easy and not complicated and not 20-minute survey, but only one question, then you get a lot of response. A little bit on the outcomes. This is some word clouds showing the results of this question. sorted by stakeholders. You can maybe already guess which are the stakeholders. So for the policy making, sustainability is the keyword, followed by climate and development. For NGOs, it's climate change, followed by understanding sustainability and environment. And for industry, it's sustainability followed by development and economic and climate. So it's a bit different view on the polar regions problems in this respect. And if you look who answered this survey, it was for us a little bit frustrating, I have to say. 83% of the answers came from researchers, which is good, but we would have had more other stakeholders. We would like to have had more other stakeholders. We had 5% policymakers and businesses, 4% NGOs, and even if you made a lot of effort, only 1% from the indigenous colleagues and communities answered. That means clearly that with our way of addressing the groups, indigenous communities are not reached, and we have to find other ways to talk to them. And at the end, and we did all this work in EU PolarNet too, it comes down to meeting them personally. So for indigenous communities engagement, we learned, first of all, it's very advisable to work with an intermediary person or organization who can act as a liaison. Secondly, you have to work face-to-face with them. No way out, and it is very important for understanding, trust building, but for also conveying your message to them. And even more important is when you work with the indigenous communities, you have to acknowledge their heritage, knowledge, and the region indigenous communities inhabit as their homeland. They are not only stakeholders, they are rights holders. That you have to keep in mind for the indigenous communities in the Arctic. So the lesson learned in general are if you want to do good engagement of stakeholders and also citizens, you should start as early as possible in your project, even best before the project is submitted, and to get them successfully and equitably involved. You have to respect their knowledge, expertise, time, and heritage. You have to ensure that stakeholders can give informed consent and also accept if they do not want to be engaged at all. So don't put pressure on them. You have to discuss with your stakeholders how they would like to be engaged, get to know them, and learn about the issues they are facing. So that's the topic of conversation. You have to listen to their needs, interests, and wishes. You have to do a lot on trust building. You have to be aware that there are limitations. For example, with online tools, you do not reach all stakeholders, definitely not in the Arctic. And then the most important thing we learned is sharing is caring. That means when you do the stakeholder engagement and you work with them, you have to make sure that you share your data or information, that you also inform the people of the outcome of what you have done and designed or co-created jointly with them, and not simply go there, ask a lot of questions, disappear, and they never hear from you again. Then that was their last engagement. So that's what we learned in EU PolarNet. It's a bit special because we are speaking here about the poles. Not too many people live there. One is more or less nearly inhabited. Nevertheless, it was an interesting endeavor, and it is still ongoing. We wrote a white paper on stakeholder engagement for the poles, and you can download it on our website, which is listed here. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Very, very interesting question. Again, we are supposed to take questions only at the end, but I will make an exception. There's a very relevant question now. How citizens and stakeholders from the polar regions are different from the other Atlantic regions? And Vera is also very well positioned to reply to this question. Can you say something about that?
Yes, I can. So the biggest difference, most of the stakeholders are the same, let's say NGOs, policymakers, and so on. In Antarctica, we have only scientists as citizens and stakeholders, and a little bit tourism. So it's very restricted. In the Arctic, as I said before, we have to realize that the Arctic is inhabited, but there is also not only that there is inhabited by special adapted communities, indigenous communities, and that's why we made a special attempt to address them. I think that's the main difference between the general Atlantic, even if there are also indigenous communities in Brazil and so on. Yeah. Nevertheless, we have not too many, not so big cities like otherwise along the Atlantic Ocean, but the overarching themes, I think, are the same. Yeah, except for the indigenous, and the uninhabited continent in the south. More or less.
And Vera, sorry to put you on the spot, but would you like to add something to Nicole's reply?
Yeah, hi, Vera Hausner. Yeah, I'm living in the north. I guess Nicole is doing that as well, no?
Bremerhaven is not really the north.
No. Okay. Yeah. So and I think there is a difference because of the it's remote. So when you talk about citizen mobilization, it's a different issue. It's especially important to have a liaison, as you say, like to have people present, to know the culture, and to know also some of the ethnical dimensions that are out there, because it's also not only indigenous people in the Arctic. There are some few nuances there that you have to take care of, and you have to partner in a quite different way. So I know this because I did not only work in the Arctic, I also worked outside the Arctic. So I know that for me, the South is a bit exotic. So many people and so many such big diversity and crowds, people you could engage. So yeah, and especially the EU mission and all this organization is very mysterious to me.
Not only to you.
So Claudia already left, otherwise I'm sure she would jump in to explain all over again. So thank you again. So let's move to the next presentation. Next presentation will be from Suzanne Schaeffer. She's a postdoctoral fellow and a member of MARI, Marine and Environmental Sciences Center for Madeira, and she'll share with us her experience with the demo site of Climate Rest Innovation Action. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Just 1 second to hopefully share my screen correctly. All right. Good. I think you can see it?
Good. Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you, Jose, for the introduction. So my name is Susie Schaeffer, and I'm, as just explained, I'm a postdoc physician in MARI Madeira. And I would like to talk or present to you today part of our work in the Climate Rest project, which is based on or focuses on the restoration of macroalgae dominated habitats at Madeira Island. And Climate Rest basically just started in last December. So most of the things that I'm going to present here are a bit of work in progress and some based on some projects before Climate Rest. And just to give the overall introduction to Climate Rest, the Climate Rest project has the following objectives. So the idea is to develop and test innovative solutions for marine restoration and evaluate the efficiency and the adaptation of such solutions. And the idea is to include solutions that are scalable in the long term by providing restoration roadmaps that then afterwards can be used in other replication sites. And the demonstration sites that we are using for now for the project are 5 different coastal ecosystems in 5 different countries. And going from the north to the south, these are the demonstration areas. Each of these demonstration area is tackling a different kind of challenge. So the most northern location we're talking about is Svalbard in Norway. So they are tackling on one side the untreated sewage issue that they are having there and trying to find the impacted solutions for this. And on the other side, they're also trying to find nature-based solutions for coastal erosion. That is a challenge there. And the second location is in Ireland, where the main focus is on seagrass meadow restoration and the blue carbon in combination with that. Then we have France, where the restoration efforts are mainly focusing on oyster reefs with the also blue carbon, and they are finding seawalls solutions built in nature. And then the second last location is in Spain, where the focus of the restoration efforts are mainly on the sedimentary soft-bed ecosystems, which are affected in that location by aquaculture. And they are trying to improve the lobster habitat in the areas. And lastly, in the fifth location, which is the one that I want to focus today about, is Madeira, Portugal. We are located in the Northeast Atlantic archipelago, and we are focusing here on hard bottom habitats and mainly the restoration of macroalgae forests. So this is the location that I'm going to present for today. And to start, I would like to give a short introduction to the kind of challenges and the biological background of the project, and briefly show the planned restoration actions. But then after, I want to focus on the part on how we actually involve stakeholders and especially a citizen science program that we have in this project that I would like to present today. First of all, for the challenges. So what is actually the challenge that we are facing here at Madeira? And as we can see here from these pictures, it's always pictures from 1995, and then in the same locations, pictures taken in 2020. So it's a difference of 25 years. And as we can see in all of these locations, the populations of these most ecologically relevant macroalgae species that we used to have in 95, they had been suffering a drastic decline over the last decade. So as you can see in the pictures from 2020, most of the habitats are now barren. The macroalgae are missing and are mostly dominated by sea urchin species. And so the objective that we see from here is that basically the restoration of these macroalgae forests that provide a lot more habitat and the provision of ecosystem services in comparison to the barrens. And in order to analyze these community changes in more detail, we here in Madeira conduct yearly monitoring surveys. As you can see here from one of the pictures, we are basically repeatedly every year going back to the same locations, and just without going much into detail now here, but we're basically counting everything that we can find. So we collect abiotic info like the locations, temperature, and this kind of information, but then we also count the fish community. We analyze the macroinvert community and also the sessile community, including algae and other sessile organisms. And by using and combining this information that we are collecting on these surveys, we can basically assess the typical assemblages in these locations and determine correlations and changes over time, and use these baseline as baseline information for modeling after modeling approaches. And then, wrong direction. And then don't get very scared with this very, very confusing graph, but the basic message that I would like to show you here is that this data that I was just presenting to you, we can then be used in conjunction together to analyze the structure of the community. And what we can see here is on this graph that the communities, there's basically two different communities that we can clearly see here, which respond very well or correspond very well to the pictures that I showed in the beginning for the challenge. So on the one side, we have here the kind of green circle on the left, which we can, you might not be able to read it, but it's all the erect algae and canopy algae. So all these kind of habitat forming macroalgae forests. So these are the communities that are dominated by such species. And on the other side, on the right-hand side, we have our sea urchin dominated barren areas. So we can see that these blue and red circles are two different sea urchin species that are dominant in these areas. And we can see where we have the sea urchins, we have a lack of the dominant macroalgae that we have in the other communities. And the question that arises by looking at this is, so how can we shift from one side to the other? So how can we shift the state from this barren sea urchin dominated state to the macroalgae dominated side. And the main question that arises here is basically what happens actually if we remove the key grazer. And although we scientists, we love to run our experiments, it was actually not necessary in that case, because there was in 2018, a couple of years ago, a disease that came up in the oceans around Madeira, which caused a sea urchin mass mortality event in 2018. So that was kind of a natural, maybe not bad to say, it's a good thing on the scientist way, a big experiment that we were kind of witnessing in that time of predator removal. And then when we can look at the communities and the shift in these years. So on the left, we have the 2017 community, which you can see these red circles, which represent this kind of barren and sea urchin dominated community, was basically all around the island to be found and dominant. While in 2018, during this mass die-off of sea urchins, we can see that there's slowly a change in the community. And then 2019 onwards, we can see that actually communities have shifted and are now dominated by macroalgae again, and not anymore by the barrens and by the sea urchins. So we could actually identify in a study that we did in these years that there is a kind of tipping point to trigger this shift between one and the other state, and that is around like 50 sea urchins per 100 square meters, meaning below this number, the community stays macroalgae dominated, and once that it reaches, the sea urchins reach a certain number of 50 per 100 square meters, the community slowly changes into this barren state. And with this background, now coming to Climaris, with this background, we developed our restoration actions, which we are planning twofold. So on one side, we are focusing on forestation efforts, meaning we want to promote the macroalgae, forests, that we want to promote macroalgae growth in our locations. And there are several options that we are exploring in that, doing transplantation of in situ or in lab created or reared algae the outside, or seeding. And on the other side, the second restoration action we are planning is grazing control. As we saw before, that the sea urchin is one of the most common grazer and most important species controlling the macroalgae populations here. And there are several options that we are discussing and trying there, which are caging experiments or removal or culling experiments. And while we are planning lots of this kind of biological and ecological studies in this project with lab work and this scientific monitoring by diving, there's also a big aspect that I would like to focus on now, which is the participatory restoration actions that we are planning. So the idea is to engage selected stakeholders to participate in these restoration actions. And one of the bigger stakeholders, or more important stakeholders in these restoration that we identify is actually the diving centers. Madeira has a very big tourism industry, and with a big focus on aquatic water activities, and a big community of divers and diving centers. And so the idea is to engage with the diving centers and include them in the restoration activities regarding locations and also activities themselves. Use the divers for a monitoring program, and also raise awareness in general in the tourist areas by approaching hotels with the seafront Lido areas. And for the next minutes, I would like to focus on how we are engaging or started to engage with the dive community using their help and engagement into our monitoring program. So basically, we developed an app that dive guides and their clients can use in the debriefing, and which I'm going to show in the next slides how this exactly works. But there was already a first trial of the viability of this monitoring program using this app, and also usability survey that we published already in this year. So if anybody wants to get more on the technical and scientific sides and ecological side of this, feel free to take a look at this. But for the purpose of this presentation, I would simply like to show the app and show how we are using the information after. So this is kind of a quick walkthrough through the app. The app is called Dive Reporter. And as a first step is that we're asking the dive guide with the group in the debriefing to select the dive spots that they dived in, select the duration of the dive and the number of divers, which this information is basically used to standardize the effort after for our data set. And on the second slide, they can see a list of 24 pre-selected species, which I'm going to explain in a second how we selected these species exactly. But basically, by clicking on any of these, it opens up an information page for each of the species with a bit of information, the conservation status, general description, and some kind of fun fact and interesting information. And most importantly, this area down here with the kind of numbers is for the dive guide and for the clients to select basically the abundance of this particular species that they've encountered during their dive. And for the species that we selected, it's 24, which range from algae over invertebrates to fish and even turtles and seals, which we have in the area and can be encountered while diving. And the selected species are selected because of different reasons. So some of these are non-indigenous species in the area, some of them even invasive. So it's very important to monitor their abundance and see their distribution around the island. Other species are endangered. Some of these species are iconic and very important to the dive community. Some are economically important and others are habitat forming. So some of the algae, for example, which we are more interested in the climate risk context, of course. And for the kind of output that we can get, this is kind of preliminary data that I'm just showing here because we just started as a first step in end of July. Going to the diving centers, and we had previous meetings with them, including them in the process of what they think which species are important to them and which kind of ways they want to be approached. But in July, we started basically distributing little laptops, little tablets that with the app installed, so that the dive guides can start using the application in their debriefings. And the data that I'm just going to show here very, very quickly is basically 2 months. So it's basically August and September data from 3 different diving centers that started already recording during that period. And after 2 months of these three diving centers, we had 149 reports altogether, with registering or recording more than 1,100 species. So on average, we can see that during each of the dives that they reported, on average, I've seen 7 or 8 of the 24 species. And what kind of data can we see from this is I picked 3 random species here from our 24. It's in these 149 reports, 88 times they've seen at least 1 octopus. So that means that in 59% of the dives, they've actually encountered octopus. The second species I have here is the harpoon weed, which is a non-indigenous algae species that we have here and is very, very common already. As you can see, in 94% of the dives, this was encountered. And then one of the more rare species is our loggerhead turtle, was only found 4 times during this period, during the last 2 months. So only in 3% of the reported dives, this species was seen. And just a quick screenshot here, basically from one of these outputs. So this is an output that not only we as a scientist can see, but also the dive centers and the users of the app on their account can basically see. This is a map of the occurrence of the octopus, for example, over the last 2 months. So you can see in which areas the species is more commonly seen in sight. So this is just kind of the first steps of starting the citizen science survey and monitoring. As next steps, we currently produced, first of all, a poster that we're going to put in all the participating diving centers explaining exactly how to use the app and why species monitoring is important. So the dive guides, but also the guests can get some information on the background of the app. And on the other side, we prototype seahorse here on the left, which is a kind of kiosk structure to put in each of the diving centers that are participating. And we started approaching the diving centers and showed them the first prototype and got very, very positive feedback. They are very happy to host our seahorse in their diving centers and making the app like this kind of easier spottable and easier usable for their dive guests after. So this is one of the participating diving centers that the picture here in the middle, and we are currently in the process of producing the final version of the kiosks and delivering them to the diving centers. So the idea of this is to keep the diving centers involved and interested and active, and keep getting them interested and active in the project. And with this, I would like to thank all the diving centers that have participated, as well as the institutions and projects that are involved in these ongoing efforts. And lastly, I would like to underline that this is obviously a team effort of a large team that is ranging from the IT department to ecologists and divers. And I hope I represented all of the different sections and all of the different people appropriately today. And with this, I would like to close, and I'm happy to receive any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you so much. We have a question for you, but we will leave these questions to the end. Is that okay?
Fine.
But you can start reading, because they are asking if it is open source or not. They already tried
okay.
to.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Sure.
Yeah. So now we move to Vera. Are you there, Vera? Okay. Good. Can you share your presentation, Vera?
Yes, I can.
So I suppose there will be a lot of similarities between your presentation and Suzanne's, because you're dealing with, a similar challenge.
It's very fun to listen to Suzanne, because we have the same issues, and we also look to tourism as one of our solutions. And we don't have that app. So I wish you could be our associated region, but you're in Portugal, so you cannot. So that's a pity. But so that's or we could be your associated region then. But so it's very fun to see the similarities, actually, even though we are far north in the Arctic. It's very similar in Madeira. Different species, though. Yes, I'm presenting for the Agora, the Atlantic Arctic Agora. We are building this lighthouse, or supporting lighthouse connecting to coastal restoration with nature and people. And when we say with nature, we mean nature-based solutions for solving societal challenges. And with people is, of course, citizen engagement and mobilization. I'm from the Arctic University of Norway, and we are rather close to the community in question, even though when you drive out there, it's still a bit remote, the area we are working with. And I'm going to put a little bit more effort on that particular demo in the Arctic. I was told to emphasize citizen engagement and mobilization for this presentation. So that's also why I didn't bring in so much of the science as Susanne did in this presentation, more of the citizen engagement part. Just to show, we have 3 demonstration sites in Arctic Atlantic Agora, and one is in the northernmost part of northern Norway, and then you have Cork region in Ireland, and then you have the central region in Portugal. The Norwegian demonstrator is called Arctic Archipelago. It's on the 70 degrees north, so it's rather far north. Here we are working with the whole country, but where we are working most intensively is with the municipality of Karlsøy, which has a huge sea area that they are managing, 600 islands and islets, but only 5 is inhabited. So it's when you go out to Karlsøy, it's very similar to many other Arctic communities, small islands, remote, and a few places are inhabited, and small communities. About 14% is protected area, more on land than in the marine areas, which perhaps will increase in the future, given that we are going to have 30 with the coming Montreal Agreement. What is very interesting with this area is that the local decision makers are managing all this area, both the protected and not protected. So they are responsible for the municipalities, small municipalities, only 2,100 people are responsible for managing these huge areas, both through marine spatial planning and through these protected area boards, which is led by the mayor and which consists of local politicians, indigenous Sami parliament and county council representatives. And then you have the protected area manager supporting their work. We have the same problem as in Madeira. We have too many sea urchin barrens, so restoration is maybe more important than protection, even though it's among the richest ones in the north. This community, it has a big seabird colony that has declined steeply. And we also have coastal stocks that have been a bit depleted previously. And therefore we need to remove these urchins and perhaps restore the coastal stocks so they could keep these urchins in check after restoration. So you have especially the Atlantic wolffish that we are focusing on. And we also try to find ways to halt decline in seabird populations. So given that we are working with the local decision makers and we have established this community of practice, we are working in a living lab with a living lab methodology, where we are working with users, private actors, knowledge institutes of different sorts, and public actors, and of course both schools and the university with the students is heavily involved in this, so that we also ensure education and mutual learning during the process. So a living lab methodology means that we experiment with solution and we design for learning, monitoring and evaluating the impact of these solutions. We engage and mobilize citizens, and citizens go beyond users. That's what Nicole also said something about, that there's a difference between stakeholders and citizens, but they are also overlapping. Then we are co-creating and co-producing knowledge together with fishermen, tourism, and the local community in general. Agora means meeting space. So when you design a living lab, it's very important that you have this as your main focus, to create a collaborative environment for trust and mutual learning, for experimenting with new mental models, ideas, and practices to solve sustainability challenges. You need to have a certain kind of openness, and actually it takes time. Even though we have the community of practice already in place locally, it takes time to work to build this mutual trust, because you need support from a broader range of citizens than the few you have in this in the core group of the living lab. The role of researcher in this process would be to first activate and then maybe facilitate the participation and dialogue for the purpose of transformative change, and of course also support with figuring out new ways of low-cost monitoring and management of the areas that they have huge amount of with very few people. So we want to establish a transformative living lab for ecosystem management. We will engage, mobilize citizens, build local capacity for them to monitor and manage themselves using low-cost techniques, build nature-based economies to protect and restore biodiversity and increase carbon storage from kelp forest, In this case, we are looking into other alternative livelihoods to salmon aquaculture, which the municipality has stopped the expansion of aquaculture in licenses in their municipality because they want to diversify and ensure that environmental issues are taken care of. Also, we want to reinforce the local bonds that is already there, but we will also like to be quite broad about it and to connect people with the ocean to a large extent. So we have packages of solutions, which I'm not going into detail here, but together will be transformative innovations for ecosystem-based management, where we will co-design and co-implement together with the people in this area, and where we will finally protect and restore ecosystems and biodiversity, and enable people to have a decent living based on ecological practices and increase resilience to climate change. And for those who are interested, we are building on the theory of change, design thinking, most significant change, and deliberative democracy. So what we want to also to do is to spread ourselves over at least where the islands where there are people living. We want to have some activities in the whole municipality. And that's because we want this to be owned, people to feel ownership, not only in a small part of the municipality, but all over this huge area. So we have a school where we build an underwater garden for growing kelp, and to see how it works with carbon and biodiversity. Our idea here, and with the art-based research with youth, is that the youth can transfer in a way the knowledge to the wider community, also to strengthen their attachment to the home place, because these areas are also struggles with youth migrating out. So we want to build a strong base for what do the youth want with their municipality. And we also hope that they could teach the parents, and that we also could learn from their parents. For instance, we are working with fishermen, where we are co-producing knowledge about what has happened in this area, and searching for potential solutions through that. And we use fuzzy cognitive mapping, timeline, socio-ecological timelines, and participatory GIS with fishers. And I've started doing that in local community who's very engaged. So it's very fun to work with. But we have a strong engagement with tourism, just like in Madeira. We are building ecotourism, where we are trying to create a business model for protecting and restoring biodiversity. The collaborator there is Puka Travel, and they have also gained this PADI license now. So they will start a diving center, hoping to, in a way, build up a diving industry, which also contributes to removing urchins and monitoring the oceans. They have also what is important about them is also they have the maritime skills, and of course the security rules and the diving equipment and everything to run big citizen campaigns with people who could go and help remove urchins. So they call it the Grand Shift Initiative, and they act then as an agent of citizen engagement. And their idea is to bring in people from Tromsø, which is a city nearby, 70,000 people who you could potentially recruit from, and bring them out there to help remove one of the fjords. But still, you need some bigger scale technologies to remove urchins as well. Therefore, we are also looking into possibilities of using the urchins, and also approaching the different industries that are already there, whether they could help us with the urchins to create a temporary markets at least, and use. There are some experiments going on in other communities with using this for fertilization of for farming. So we are looking into such things. What can we do to actually increase the incentives to work to remove urchins? Then we are also for some of the smaller colonies, protected area managers are trained to use drones and put on GPS tracking. And on the larger ones, we will have the scientists do that but bring the data in and send back to the community. And we are also working now together with the protected area managers who are updating the management plans. So, and we have thought about removal of garbage campaigns, help develop visitor guidelines, and and that's what we've done until now. But we have many different activities underway that we will build upon in this project, and we call it Seeds of Transformative Change. So we test them out, and hopefully they will grow and change, and we could expand to other local communities in the Arctic and beyond. So citizen science, voluntary non-scientist collaboration in collecting and interpreting data useful for research. So we are doing that, but mostly with the tourist companies, except that we are working with deep knowledge together with fishers. There are 5 ways we could approach this: through observing, get help to observing marine animals, geocache, monitor marine litter, sampling when they are going out on the trips, if it's done in a systematic manner, and then by contributing to marine restoration. But for us, it's very important because we don't have like 100,000 to recruit. Then you almost will take all the adults in northern Norway, and I don't think every one of them would go out in a boat and take on a suit and start removing urchins. So we are in a way dependent on working with industry, which we are doing. But another thing is that citizen science in these remote areas, it's not, we are talking here about transformative change. So, and it's much more than citizen science. So the expected impact of the way we are working, the way we designed it through a living lab methodology, is that we expect through local engagement, the inclusion of experience knowledge. A lot of this must be face-to-face because we cannot, in a way, crowdsource this of reasons that we are working with local communities here. And this could help us tailor the solution to local needs. The other thing in this process we are designing this forest to enable social learning and trust throughout this process, and to build a sense of ownership, especially among the youth, and to bring in incentives to take care of your own place, like having an ownership to place. Overall, we hope that this will, in the long end, result in citizen support of solutions, and therefore long-term impact necessary for transformative change towards sustainability. And this is something that the mayor really wants to see, that Karlsøy could be a sustainable model for the future, something to look to when it comes to implementation of the coming Montreal Agreement, at least some of the principles relating to restoration and HB solutions. And then you need broad support. So it's not enough only with industry, and it's not enough only with NGOs. It's not enough with policymakers. It's not, and it's not. You need a broad support of schools, citizens, and that can have a range of different solutions and small initiatives that together could make this change. So then that's all for me for now. It's there's many partners in the Agora project, and those who are involved in the Norwegian demo is UIT, where I am, Karlsøy Kommune, Arctic Sustainability Lab, NINA, Norwegian Institute for Nature Research, Norwegian Institute for Water Research, Puka Travel, and the Protected Area Board of Nordkvaløya, Rebbenesøya. And then you see all the European partners below. So yeah, thank you. So look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Vera. Fantastic presentation. And I've been there. I've seen some of the results. And we met the mayor, Mona, like 2 or 3 weeks ago in Cork. And she's really pushing things very far in her community. This is fantastic. So thank you so much. We have questions for you. But then we'll move on to the next presentations, and then we will start this question and answer. Is that okay, Vera? Okay, good. Okay, so unfortunately, Elena couldn't be here, but she sent a video. I will share with you. Just a second.
Okay, so, well, my name is Elena Blanco. I'm a doctor in civil engineering that is working in University of Cantabria, and I'm going to present the project named Artificial Reef 3D Printing for Atlantic Area. This is a project financed by Interreg Atlantic, and it's a project that has just finished now in June 2023. We've been running this project for more than 5 years. We started at the end of 2017, and we have received a budget of around 2 million euros, and 75% of that budget has been funded by Interreg Atlantic. University of Cantabria, we are the coordinators of the project, but other partners have participated. So the objective of this project was basically to build 36 artificial reefs and also to monitor them for almost 3 years. These 36 artificial reefs have been immersed in Santander, here in Spain, in Porto, near Matosinhos, ports in Bournemouth, at the south of England, and also in Normandy, close to Saint Malo. Okay, 9 pieces have been immersed on these places and have been monitoring for almost 3 years. So I'm going to start my presentation, explain a little bit how we did these artificial reefs. So there's going to be some technical information about the materials that we used. And then I'm going to explain a little bit how was the construction process, the immersion process, and the main results about the monitoring campaigns. Okay. And then we're going to end talking about the following stage that was the diffusion activities that we have organized together with aquariums. Okay, so focusing now on the materials that we used. Basically, we built all these artificial reefs using concrete, more specifically mortar, because the sand that we use, the aggregates that we use, it contains basically sand, which is like a particle size of less than 2 millimeters. Okay, because we wanted to develop artificial reefs for restoring different ecosystems, also use them as a compensatory measures for maritime infrastructures, wanted to use more sustainable materials. So far, there are some experience building artificial reefs. We are not the first ones, of course. So we finally developed more than 150 different formulations. Some of them had better properties in terms of strength, while others have better properties in terms of printability. Okay, among those more than 200 formulations, we selected 3 mortars, the best ones, that used cement type 3D, and about 3 types of geopolymers mortars. Okay, then with those 3 plus 3, we developed 4 different mortars. 3 of them using the cement, and 3 using the geopolymer. Also, we make variations in terms of the aggregates that we used. Okay, one of them was the cement, the CL, contained as aggregate natural limestone. It's very abundant here in Cantabria, in the north of Spain. We also wanted to try to use to replace part of the limestone for grass cells. Okay, because a priori we thought it could be potentially better for the environment using grass cells. Also, we wanted to try other kind of residues that nowadays they are not really valorizing, which is the crushed glass from car winds, okay, car windows. And also, basically, we reproduce the same aggregates for the geopolymer family, more or less, okay. The next step was to fabricate prismatic samples. We wanted to analyze whether these formulations, because we are going to immerse them in water for years, whether they were able to have a sufficient mechanical strength and that the water didn't affect the new formulations. And also we wanted to assess whether different flora and fauna, either invertebrates, algae, or whatever, attach to the surface, okay? So for that, we had to print here on the top left image, you have our 3D printer. We had to print like a slab. Then we cut specimens, as the ones that you see in the bottom left image. And then with those specimens, we put them on crates, and then we immerse them in water, in seawater. In the 4 locations, actually, in Santander, Porto, Bournemouth, and San Malo. Okay, so we take out the crates after we build several crates. So we take them out after 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months to assess the mechanical strength through a flexural test and a compression test. And also we analyze the biomass that it was adhered to the surface. Okay, so we put it into an oven, we remove all the water content, and then we weigh that. Okay. So among those 6 materials, we had to select 2 materials, because with those 2 materials, we decided to build artificial reefs. Okay, so we carry out a multi-criteria analysis in order to include 4 criteria in order to help us to take a decision on which were the best 2 materials. So we defined one of the criteria was cost, okay, also divided by the strength. A life cycle assessment. We have quite a lot of experience performing life cycle assessment, which is a technique that helps you to analyze which different materials or construction methods have more or less impact, including different impacts, not only CO2 emissions, but also eutrophication of the environment, harmful or toxicity for humans, toxicity for animals, and for flora. So it's a very detailed and objective way of compare the sustainability of different materials. We also consider printability as a kind of categorical criteria. Not all the motors that we developed were easy to print without a 3D printer, so we have to consider that. And also the bioresistivity, taking as a parameter the biomass that we analyzed in the previous stage. So once that we carry out that multi-criteria analysis, we found out that the best 2 mortars were, both of them actually had cement. One of them had cement and 100% of limestone, and the other one, the best second one, was cement plus 50% of limestone plus 50% of glass. Okay. What about the design, the shapes? In parallel to developing of the materials, we had to develop the shapes. The partners that are participating in the project, basically we have like 2 main backgrounds. Some of us are civil engineers, like me, while others are biologists, marine biologists. So by carrying out some brainstorming meetings, we define 4 main shapes. Okay, these 4 main shapes try to consider 2 external shapes, like cubic or random, and also we also wanted to analyze whether putting big overhangs or small overhangs may have some kind of influence in the attraction of different species. So at the end, 2 external shapes multiplied by 2 kinds of overhangs, we develop at the end 4 potential shapes. Apart from that, we defined a 5th shape, which is a control block. It's a control block, basically it's a cubic block without any kind of holes or channels or overhangs, okay? That tried to replicate more or less what is a cubic block used in the construction of breakwaters, okay? At the end, because we chose 2 materials multiplied by 4 shapes, we had a total of 8 pieces. If we add on top of that the control block, then we have 9 pieces, 9 units to immerse in each location, okay? As the ones that you are seeing on the bottom row. So we had also to carry out some numerical calculations to determine that each unit could bear the forces exerted in the water, either by the waves or by the currents. Okay, the worst conditions were actually here in Santander, and basically we found out that all the artificial reefs could be okay, but we had to add on the basement, on the bottom of each artificial reef, a steel plate of 200 kilos more to make them more stable. Here you have part of the team that has been involved in the project, and also you have a piece that we have produced with our project, and at the back you have our 3D printer that is located here in the University of Cantabria. We had to build, as I mentioned before, 36 artificial reefs. 9 were immersed in Santander, 9 in Porto, 9 in Cannes, around Saint Malo, and 9 in Bournemouth. Okay. Here I'm going to show you a video of the fabrication process of one piece. It took us around between 6 to 7 hours to build one piece. And in order to be able to make a kind of complex shape with holes and tunnels, we use basically sand. What you are seeing here in the video is the 3D printing working, and also some assistant technical technicians adding sand on the holes and tunnels to be able to build these complex shapes. Otherwise, it's not possible to make holes and tunnels with fresh mortar. Okay, so that was somehow the trick. Which are the advantages? I've been talking that this project consisted of producing artificial reefs through 3D printing. Well, the main advantage of using 3D printing is that versus mold casting is that you can create any kind of shape. As you can see, we were able to create a complex shape with other hands, with holes and tunnels, etc. Doing that with a foam work would be nearly impossible, or would be very, very expensive. So after building the artificial reefs, we have to store them in our warehouse in the civil engineering school where we are located. Then we had to load it in a truck, and then here we can see the specific installation process here in Santander. Each piece was removed from the box in order to minimize the weight. It was transported to the loading area to a vessel, and then load each of them in a vessel, and then the vessel had incorporated a crane, and we were able to immerse them through that crane on the vessel. Okay, in the top left image, you can see the day of the immersion. It was in the 20th of May of 2020, more than 3 years ago. And here I'm going to show you a video of the immersion after 2 months, the degree of bioreceptivity after 2 months. Okay. This video was recorded by a couple of colleagues that work here in the university. They are not participating in the project, but they practice apnea. Okay, diving through apnea, without models, and they took a video 2 months after immersed artificial reefs, and we were able to see how they were colonized. Okay, so very quickly they get colonized by different species. As you can see as well, we had to install to connect artificial reefs just in case a steel chain that was used in order to, in the eventual case of very strong storms, if one artificial reef may drag, it might stop the other ones. You can see here an octopus attached to it. I'm going to show you here just a few results, not all of them because it's quite extensive. So basically, we carry out 10 monitoring campaigns from June 2020 till March 2023. These are the results only from Santander, okay? Basically, we wanted to compare how was the colonization of our own artificial reefs and compare them with the natural surrounding area, the rocky area that you saw. And also with ART means an artificial structure which is close to the immersion area, which is a concrete ramp. Okay. The second phase of the project that we started last year, we managed to get an extension of the project through Interreg Atlantic and some also extra funds. And the purpose of that extension was the capitalization of the results, as probably you are interested in. Basically, what we try is to engage some other stakeholders, like the Port Authority of Santander and also some aquariums, in order to make more visible to these projects, okay? And also somehow to try to find potential applications of the artificial reefs apart from restoring ecosystems, impoverished ecosystems, or try to use the artificial reefs as a compensatory measure every time we build a maritime infrastructure. Now, okay, I'm going to show you a couple of videos of the first one on the top, the one that you are seeing now, is the day of the immersion of artificial reefs. You know, as you can see, the pieces are, we designed lights, so two divers can manipulate them easily. Okay. Also, the Maritime Museum of Cantabrico have organized different events. The guides are explaining the projects when visitors get closer to artificial reef, so that's nice. It's a very nice and kind of easy way to give promotion to the project because they receive thousands of visitors per year, both aquariums. And also, they actually, this Monday, I participated in a diffusion event and I gave a talk about the 3P project, and some citizens came to the talk. So we have a very good communication in order to make diffusion of these projects. Okay. So in relation to applications, potential applications that you can use for the one that you can use artificial reefs, apart from enhancing biodiversity in impoverished areas, there are other kind of applications. From the, you can see in the top left image, there are slightly different shape, those artificial reefs, but there's some experience using specific species that their main purpose, more than make the piece find a certain, but also it's also to try to break nets, fishing nets that try to fish in protected areas where fishing is not allowed. Okay. Also, there are some experiences of using artificial reefs for recreational diving or sport fishing. Okay. Also, as I mentioned before, one of the potential uses of the artificial reefs is to use it as compensatory measures for any kind of maritime infrastructure. On the top left image, we are seeing an offshore foundation. One of the strategies could be in order to enhance or to attract marine life quicker, to build some artificial reefs, to immerse some artificial reefs around the foundations. So we will try to recover back some of the species displaced during the construction. Okay, we can say the same when we are building any kind of breakwater, dike, etc., any kind of maritime work. Okay. Also, one of the less known applications is to create more surfing areas. By modifying the heights of the bottom, we can produce the break or the wave and basically create areas where people can surf. So thank you so much for.
So thank you for the presentation. I mean, Elena is not here, but I have some very interesting comments to share with you later. So maybe we could start with the question and answer session. I mean, so the first one is question is to Suzanne. No, so will you make this app available for other initiatives? Is it open source? How can we contribute with local marine biodiversity? I mean, he's from Colombia. So how he can use your app in Colombia?
Yes. First of all, I'm an ecologist and diver, so the exact IT part of the app, I'm very happy to forward afterwards the contact. Feel free to contact me, and I can forward that to our IT department. But generally, the idea is that we would be open to collaborate for other regions. So the idea is the app is conceived in a way that it should be fairly easy to adjust to other regions, changing species appropriate to the region in question, and generally could be used in other projects. I think for now the app is freely available on, I think, both iOS and the app stores. So feel free to just take a look and try. And feel free to contact us if you are interested in adjusting the app for your purposes, for your regions. Yes, we are very open for that.
Thank you so much. I will take another question, similar, before passing to John Bryden. He just joined us for the final presentation. Vera, this is basically the same questions. Great presentation, Dr. Hausner. Is this narrative mapping tool available to other projects? Again, is it open source? The same question. How can they use your ATIC tool in Colombia?
Yeah, well, the specific map we used there was story maps from ArcGIS, and they have a free version. But then if you want even more functions, you need to pay $10 a month or 100 a year. But there are also other open source softwares for participatory mapping online, and I will actually post in the chat here a reference to a book who has evaluated all the participatory softwares, what they cost and what they do. And that could be useful maybe for many who works with citizen engagement. So I will do that.
Okay, thank you so much. So we move to John Bryden. Welcome, John. I mean, hello, how are you? Thank you so much for being here with us. And John will present Thames 21. So if you please, I mean, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see the presentation now. Is that all right?
Yes.
Brilliant. So yeah, my name's John Bryden. I'm head of improving rivers at Thames 21, which is a rivers trust. So we were set up to engage communities and restore river health in the Thames Basin. My background is I came to Thames 21 9 years ago from the Environment Agency, which is a government organisation which sort of regulates rivers, water quality, so on and so forth. I suppose that's partly why I come from this. We are an organisation of two halves, the community engagement side and the improving rivers side. And while we're operating two halves, essentially we try to enable all projects to do both elements as well. I first of all thought it would be useful to really think about what are the mechanisms that we need to restore rivers by, and essentially there is a lot of expertise and we all speak a very different language. We all and a lot of the time these specialists do not agree. But where we do agree, we can come up with great plans to restore rivers, restore catchments, but often they have failed, and as conservationists we have failed. Certainly in the UK, 1 in 6 of our species is now in decline or at risk of extinction. So, as conservationists broadly, we have failed. Why we have failed is really around the implementation often. And I think that's where citizen science and citizen engagement and citizen collaborative working really come in. And from my perspective, I take citizens in the very widest perspective. They are community groups, they are friends of groups, they are fishermen, they are canoeists, they are walkers, they are river users. But that's not just our community. Our community is a much wider sector. And that's where we have also failed to pitch. So whether it's farmers and landowners, governments, elected officials, businesses, whether that be polluters or abstractors or users of water, these are the people that we have failed to influence. And that is partly around a lack of collaborative approaches and a lack of integration of language and making us understandable to them. So I'm really going to present a few different elements of work that we've done in the UK and as examples of how this can be done on either large or small processes. So the first one is the catchment-based approach, which is unique to the UK. This is where generally third sector or non-statutory organisations are funded to host catchment partnerships throughout England. So there are 109 catchment partnerships in England and Thames 21 host or co-host 10 of them. And this is where we integrate broadly anyone with an interest or a stake within the catchment to a partnership to develop collaborative action. Now this, so it really enables communities and statutory organisations and regulators to speak on the same level and decide what is important in the catchment and then develop plans and strategies to go and implement them. So this is broadly the 4 elements, how Thames 21 approaches it. We engage stakeholders and build partnerships. And that is, as the last slide says, everything from your local Friends of Park group to your water company, to your regulator, to your local authority, to your elected officials. We share and exchange information and knowledge so that we all can broadly understand the issues within the catchment, understand each other's concerns and understand each other's drivers. And that enables us to develop and identify projects together and use those to develop a catchment action plan and make sure that that action plan is an evidence-based approach. So it's, based in reality and also looks at how then we can implement those programs. So that, that evidence-based approach is key to then linking into the funding mechanisms to do that. What I'd say over the years that I've been involved in this, and that's over 10 years now, is that these processes, when done well, they can lead to many different avenues of success. So, businesses can identify funding sources, local authorities can integrate it into their local plans. And so that's where, as an organisation, we are getting much more value than just us, but we're integrating with others to develop real actions to restore river health. I thought it's also worthwhile highlighting, given the subject of this meeting, really what some of the other half of the organisation does, which is about how we work with communities. Obviously, communities have a wide variety of knowledge on rivers and their health, and this is sort of how we framed it in terms of our community engagement structures, in how we begin to enable people to understand rivers. So, first of all, how they can meet the river and get introduced to it, become familiar, and then that enables them to value the river and the catchment. Once they can value it, they increase their understanding and their actions, and then they can act to help deliver benefits for it, and on process, and in time that can lead to sustained action, also long-term management, monitoring of our rivers, and eventually that leads to them leading and pushing others in an advocacy way to deliver further action. Now we have a range of training which supports community groups to do this and overcome some of the barriers. And this is a program which we're just about to significantly expand. We already support over 30 local river action groups who do everything from litter picks to citizen science monitoring, to, in some cases, active river restoration and further community engagement. So we have just had a philanthropic grant come through for 1.75 million, which is where we're going to be significantly expanding this program, so that enables communities and individuals to, undertake high quality monitoring and deliver river restoration activities, as well as engage their local communities and enable them to be more representative of their local community. So partly that advocacy angle as well. The barriers to restoring rivers are vast, and there are numerous academic specialisms which we as scientists undertake to assess how best and what are the causes of issues and how best to solve them. Whether it's producing models, whether it's high quality monitoring, whether it's flood risk modeling. A lot of the time these areas and these barriers can actually be broken down and simplified quite significantly. Whether that's sort of training on how to design a river restoration project, whether that's training on how to deliver a river restoration project, and the management of the health and safety around this. And we do have a few community groups who actually go out and regularly undertake activities to install wood, to take citizen science samples and integrate that to the data sets, and I'll highlight a few of them. So these are some of the communities, and whether that's also local authorities. Two of the guys on the right-hand picture are who are installing this large woody debris in the river here. They are council employees, and they're actually getting an understanding of this as well, so that they can integrate it into their future work programs, and then that doesn't just rely on us doing it, but creates that long-term sustained action from them, as well as actually the individual community groups who you can see kneeling down there actually delivering some of this work. One of the big programs we're involved with at the moment is CASCO, which is Catchment Systems Thinking, and this is a £10 million funded program from Ofwat, which is the regulator of water companies in the UK. And this is about developing citizen science into a way which can be trusted and respected from and used to help regulate the water industry, but also the whole of the water environment. And largely, I suppose we have gone down the process in the past of undertaking higher quality monitoring but at low density, and that sort of enabled us to understand broadly how healthy the catchment is. But what it's not allowed us to understand is actually where are the issues coming from and how do we go and resolve them. So increasingly, we're talking about developing high density, low quality networks of citizen science methods. And this is a process which is bringing that all together, simplifying methods, verifying methods, ensuring that the training for communities is in the right processes, and then going and demonstrating in 10 demonstration catchments throughout the country, of which we are coordinating one of those, as well as coordinating the training program. So really this will then this process will then inform business plans for water companies, as well as catchment management strategies, to really develop that high quality evidence-based approach. And these are sort of some of the citizen scientists at work. We've got people on the left here undertaking riverfly surveys. So this is a kick sample survey, very similar to how the government undertake theirs. And it sort of enables, you know, if a trigger level is reached, it enables the Environment Agency to, you know, go out and investigate why that trigger level has been reached. So it's a really good early warning system throughout the catchment of where or pollution incidents occurring, so that they can be identified and fixed. All the way to the on the right here, where there are a bunch of eels in a pollution incident actually at an outfall looking for oxygen because there is no oxygen in the water. And so, you know, this is really great evidence to highlight the impact of some pollution issues which would have gone unnoticed by regulatory authorities. And then we've got communities on the right at the top, actually removing vegetation in a constructed wetland to ensure that it continues to perform. The final example I wanted to highlight was one which I did a number of years ago, and it was probably one of the more difficult ones which we've undertaken. And that's actually to use a water quality model, a high quality academic model to identify not just pollution sources, but also mechanisms to resolve where we should be building wetlands to treat the water quality so it reaches good status. So the community groups here who are represented here undertook a number of sessions with us to understand the model, to then look at maps and, you know, surface water networks and identify parks throughout the catchment, to identify where they would like to build constructed wetlands. These are the ones which they've identified. We have actually implemented a number more of these now since I produced this slide. And on the top there is sort of what one of these systems looks like. And this system, First Farm, is actually quite a special one because it has also not just improved water quality, created better habitat for biodiversity, but in actual fact, the communities around there say it's actually enabled them to become much more connected and have a much better quality of life, because as a result of this, there was also a number of interpretation installations, footpath, cycle networks developed, all which made their lives usable, as well as or lives more livable and enjoyable, as well as sort of the green space much more accessible. And what the water quality model predicted was that these wetlands would significantly improve the water quality to good status throughout the catchment, so to near natural. And I suppose with this, I just wanted to also highlight that while this was great for us, and we've been able to use this to gain funding from a variety of sources, including corporates, we have also been able to, we've also been able to integrate that with their support into the flood management strategies for the area and the green infrastructure strategies. They also took the work which was undertaken and presented it to local developments who've been able to integrate the outcomes and the objectives of the project in their development plans, which is something that we would have never been able to do or even thought to have undertaken. So that highlights just how community groups can really enable that local impact much further than we as an NGO can. So I suppose I just wanted to thank you and for listening, and if there's any questions, please do ask. And yeah, I suppose this is just a photo of a large-scale river restoration project we've undertaken in partnership with communities in an urban park in London. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Very nice presentation, a lot of work. I mean, the local stakeholders and citizens. Well, I mean, we have some questions here. I mean, we still have like 4 minutes, but you know, I'm a terrible moderator. I never respect. So let's go through these questions again. So we have a question from Gary for Suzanne. Are cities only involved in the monitoring, or would you think about involving them in the algae foresting, urchin removal efforts?
Yes, it's definitely something that we discussed and we are still discussing. For the algae reforestation efforts, most likely not, simply because we will be talking about quite large structures that need to be deployed. So in the monitoring of these, yes, but in the active part of putting these structures down and this, it's not going to be feasible to include. We are going to include the diving centers in the discussion where to put these structures in the locations, but the actual effort of deployment not going to be done with the citizens science project. For the sea urchin removal, it's something that will depend a bit on the legislation and effort of the diving centers. So there's some dialogue going on if diving centers want to be included and want to include their clients in these efforts. So that's definitely something that is up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we have a kind of there could be a kind of a general question for all the speakers. I mean, maybe Vera, you could join us if you turn your camera on, if you're still there. So, I mean, how is the people perception or the community of practice in terms of your, I mean, actions related to the restoration? Maybe we should start with John.
So I suppose when we actually start to undertake, or in an ideal world, when we start to undertake restoration projects, we actually undertake a co-design workshop, and part of that is a community mapping process. We do try to ensure that communities are represented throughout that and a wide range of people. Obviously, you can't satisfy everyone, but you do need to take that consensus and, you know, build that into your work. So if there is virulent opposition to something, we need to consider that and build that into our program. So we do undertake that. But I think the other element, I mean, broadly in the UK, there is not a natural river. And so the understanding of what rivers should look like is quite low. So part of what we do is try to educate people on the approaches, and that's why we run sort of some of the training programs. And also there's nothing better than to take people to see what has been done elsewhere as an example, to see if that can help them, you know, envisage what could happen in their local park. But yeah, usually it's a, you know, once you've described and gone through those processes, usually it's a very positive interaction and reaction from communities.
Yes, thank you. Do you want to add something, Vera?
Well, yes, I think we have to everyone. Well, most people seem to agree to get the urchins removed for it to increase productivity, carbon source, biodiversity, livelihoods, everything. In our case, it's more like having the muscles a bit to, even though local decision makers wants this, even though the fishing community wants this, even though tourism business wants this, and everyone wants to restore the kelp forest, you need muscles and networks of many people who work together to, and that's a bit more of a challenge, because you have to in a way design to engage with many different kinds of institutions, you could say, or stakeholders. So you have to design the process and the steps you're going to make to and also get more industry involvement, maybe some development of rock. Cannot dive for all these urchins, there are too many. so yes, so it's just, I think awareness in the general public is incredibly important to get sufficient financing and industrial support to actually deal with the problem, because there is a market for urchins. People want to remove them, but it's all that between that is lacking. Yeah.
Yes, to complete this supply chain of the, I mean, this innovation. So Suzanne, something you want to add something in the Madeira?
No, for us, it's, I mean, the general perception of our stakeholders groups, when we talk to the diving centers, when we talk to the diving center guests, is very positive toward restoration actions in general. Especially the CO2 removal for us is always a bit of a discussion. We have MPA areas here that obviously there you enter in legal and politics that need to be included in order to make these things possible. But the general public and the general the diving center and diving center guests that we are mostly approaching for these are very positive and are very interested in participating in these actions.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask a question to Nicole, but before that, John, the reason we are here is because, I mean, the UK is very well known for these restoration projects for quite a long time, you know, and you know, the Mission Ocean and Waters, I mean, has one very ambitious goals of freeing to 25,000 kilometers of rivers, you know, so it's a very ambitious goals. So what things 21 could, you know, show us, to tell us how to do it, because we've been there already for quite a long time.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, yeah. So we've just released a 5-year plan which aims to get us to restoring 15 kilometers of river a year in the next 5 years. So we are trying to significantly upscale our delivery mechanism around that. Key to that is building momentum and good case studies. And once you can start to develop those good case studies and particularly promote them in a way which is impactful both for communities and for, you know, statutory organisations and funders, that's when you can start to build that momentum. So, I mean, a lot of our work is in urban areas. So, you know, bringing on your local authorities or your municipalities, both as your landowner and also a potential funder. And you have to take a very different approach when it comes to more rural, more farming areas, and, you know, operate in a way which is representative to them. So what we are starting to do is employ farmers to speak to fellow farmers in their local area. And the other thing is to increasingly, we cannot just do things because they are good, but we have to look at sort of financial mechanisms to make them work. So, you know, increasingly my work is looking at emerging environmental markets, whether that's in the UK, there's a number of them: biodiversity, net gain, carbon sequestration, water quality treatment. And instead of developing single projects, but developing sort of funding strategies so that you don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. The other thing with that, which I think is critical, is making sure it actually pays for the landowner to do it. And so that's increasingly where we are trying to work to make sure that we don't just do it because it's a good thing, but that there is actually a financial reward for those landowners, because otherwise, and that's what we feel will eventually get people coming to us as opposed to us going to them, which is where I think we all need to be, because there's never enough time to go to everyone or to deliver our 15 kilometers. We can't do that just ourselves. We need people coming to us. I think that's, if you're going to do 25,000 kilometers, that's obviously probably a good thing to do as well.
So you said that it will be like 15 kilometers a year, is that correct? So it will take like 500 years for us to reach 25,000 kilometers. So how do you, just one more question, how can we scale up in a way that, I mean, all these 25,000 kilometers of free rivers will be delivered by 2030?
So when I say, I suppose it depends what you mean by free river. essentially.
That's
like
a
if
good
you mean
point.
undammed, you know, that's very different, because when I say 15 kilometers, I mean we've physically undertaken interventions to restore the habitat there. So, you know, removing a weir, you might connect up 20 kilometers in one go. We would just count the immediate impact of the weir. So there's a bit of a difference there. And we are also one local trust, and there's something like 60 odd trusts in the UK restoring rivers. Yeah, so that my big recommendation is try and get your environmental markets working, corporate social responsibility, ESGs. You know, they are becoming increasingly relevant, and increasingly larger amounts of money are being generated and coming through those sources. And, you know, I've seen that explosion in the last 3 years, to the point where we as an organisation are struggling to generate the projects to actually input to the funds that we're being asked to apply for. So if you can get that side of it right, I think, and get the landowners coming to you, that's where you can meet both sides.
Thank you. So before a final round of comments from you, Nicole, I mean, you are dealing with the polar net, the whole polar region, let's say. How do you communicate to citizens restoration within the context of climate change? You know, it's not like, I mean, like in Portugal or Madeira. So we can promise that we can bring back the, let's say, original state of the ecosystems, but I guess we cannot do it anymore, you know, in the polar region. How do you communicate with the citizens and engage them in a very dynamic approach to restoration?
Yeah, good question. First of all, as Vera said before, this is very, very densely populated area with which we are dealing. Very, very, not very densely populated area. So not many people living there. Many areas at the moment are also not accessible. We tried. So EU Polar Net works from a research perspective. I think we are in many places in the Arctic and especially in the Antarctic still in the situation that we do not even understand what we should restore, you know, from a scientific point of view. So the changes are dramatic and the data is low. It's very difficult to communicate that. So I do not think that we really, except for the lower part, I am always, for Vera's information, of course, dealing with the, when I think about the Arctic, I think about the Arctic Ocean. So the very northern areas with the very remote areas. Of course, Norway, Iceland, Greenland, and so on. There's something more ongoing. And I think Vera can answer this better than me, because we are more looking for the research perspective, and we are working more on really the ice-covered parts. And there's not many people, and not as far as I know, except for some excellent project of citizen sciences in Canada and on the European side now for the high Arctic. So it's difficult to communicate. And we are not at this stage as our colleagues here who presented here with me, I would say.
Okay, so let's start this final round of comments, start with Vera. So what could you add in this discussion?
About the polar area?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been working elsewhere in the Arctic also, and of course Norway is a little bit in between. But when you start working with the Arctic, it's especially important that you are staying there for a while. You know, learn to know the culture and the right words and the right culture and the way things are dealt with. And even in Karlsøy, which is Norway, is a little bit different, maybe not so remote as in some communities in Greenland. what we have done is actually to hire a person who is educated at university, biology in the community to help build capacity. So to actually set aside funding and someone who could connect on a daily basis with the community will help quite a bit. Yeah.
Good. I mean, Suzanne, so would say something for us before closing the session. How can we engage citizens in the mission? How can we bring them on board? How can we co-create with them?
I think it comes back a bit to the previous presentations on starting early and identifying very well your stakeholders and your stakeholder groups, and finding the right ways of approaching different groups. As it was discussed before, for policymakers, different ways of approaching the topic is necessary than, for example, in our case, for the divers. For the diving industry, especially for the diving centers, it's already different than approaching the clients themselves. So I think it's very important to start very early approaching the different groups, finding out what their interest is, how to motivate people, being interested in the topic, and how to keep the communication going throughout the project with the different stakeholders. As this will vary very much on each stakeholder group. So I think it's very helpful to identify these things very early in the project. It's going to make the life of the communication a lot easier.
Thank you, Suzanne. And John, back to you. What are your final thoughts on how can better work with citizens and stakeholders?
I think representation is increasingly an important element. In many ways, we need to be closer to our communities and actually, start to employ people from our communities so that we can speak on a level with them. And I'm not exactly the best person for this, but, try to speak in a language which they understand. And, we as scientists can be terrible at this. And I think that sort of simplification and making things understandable and real, and then deliver on what you say, I think those are the things that communities value, and that will really help bring them on board to our messaging, if we can get it right, that is.
Oh, thank you. So thank you so much for the presentations and for these interesting comments, insights, and replies to the questions. Also, thank you for everybody from the Blue Mission team that organized these sessions, the attendees that I'm receiving a lot of WhatsApp messages here asking more questions, but they revolve around questions that were already answered. I would send them messages before. And so thank you so much for being here for more than 2 hours. Thank you, Vera, Nicole, Suzanne, Elena, she couldn't be here, John, and also Claudia, that she had to leave, and all the team from the Blue Mission, Diana, Valerie, Andre, they're all there. Come on, just show your faces, please. And Jessica, they're all there. Yeah. So they're all there. So we had some questions related to the artificial reefs. Sanusi from Nigeria, I will reply. I'll put him in contact with Elena. But so thank you so much for the team that organized this session. Thank you for the speakers. And we will keep in touch, try to solve all the problems with the world, with the citizen engagement. I'm very optimistic about that. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.